Welcome to YouTube Reviewer Christmas Day. Yep, I'm sure YouTube's gonna be flooded with videos saying, oh, this is the worst thing ever made by mankind. Oh my god, my soul, my heart, all that stuff. Disney has ruined cinema, all that good stuff. I've been saying that for a while. Well, with the live action remake, so okay, I think most people know there's been a lot of bad press about this movie. There's been a lot of quote-unquote controversies around, which I'll admit I haven't followed that closely. I've seen a little bit, and what I've seen, I mostly just strongly disagree with, but it all seems like stuff I've kind of heard from Disney before, and kind of this world. I mean, I've heard this for years. How long have these live-action remakes been going on and everything? And I must admit, as someone... I get my hipster glasses on here. As someone who hated the live-action remakes from the very beginning, well, okay, this is something I realized watching this. And maybe this helps me kind of identify with people who, you know, started off liking these okay, because I was like, man, these are always bad, always really bad. I did realize that the first one I saw, I think, was, you know, either Cinderella or Maleficent, and I was kinder to those movies when they first came out. I think because I just wasn't used to the BS yet, and there were some good things in them, but yeah, revisiting them, you just see the seeds, like the beginning of these bad ideas and just the complete misunderstanding of what these stories are about. So I will say, as someone who started off, I certainly didn't love them. I was really on the fence. Like, I can't remember if I think Maleficent, I said was okay originally, and then when I watched it again, I'm like, oh, this is terrible, like really, really awful. And then Cinderella, I think I was a touch more lenient towards, but I said, why watch it? Go watch Ever After. That's trying to do the same thing, yet so much better. And then after that, I've never liked one. I think there's some that have come close, like Cruella, I think, came kind of close. Pete's Dragon, I think, came kind of close. But I still don't think they quite work. So with all that building up to this, you know, just this movie that people have just been, you know, ripping apart left and right even before they see it, for the choices that they were making that just do not seem logical, and after years and years of people, or at least of Disney, not understanding what these fairy tales are really about and the type of storytelling that they're utilizing, they're just trying to stay far away from, and ironically, by doing so and saying they're trying to make things better, they're making things so much worse, and they're making the characters bland and everything, these arguments. You've heard me say over and over and over, like I said, I mean, literally years of this. I've had to defend myself about why Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin are bad remakes, man. Like, if people are looking at me like, oh, you're crazy, oh, come on, relax, Mulan is fine. No, actually, a lot of people agree with me on Mulan, but yeah, so on the one hand, it is nice to see this turn finally happen. On the other hand, there is a part of me that's like, you know, like, a mermaid can be black. They're not real. They're not real things. But yes, a lot of the things that people are finally seeing with these live action remakes, I agree with. I've been saying it long ago. So where does this fall in that? I think it's pretty obvious it's not good. This is not a very good movie. Where does it rank with all the other ones? Well, it started off as just a generic kind of bad, very much okay, this is what I expected from a Disney live-action remake. It sometimes looks visually nice, sometimes sounds nice, but you see them trying to fix all the problems like they're ashamed of their past fairy tales, and while there certainly are issues and they're products of the time sometimes, I think they're really missing some of the strengths of them and why people do still watch them and connect with them and remember them years later. But yes, they're trying to fix these stupid little problems that are ironically making them worse, but nothing too crazy. And then sometimes something would happen where it'd just be so bad it was funny, and that's always what I look forward to. Like, okay, at least give me something entertaining. If you're gonna be bad, at least be entertainingly bad. And there are certainly moments like that. My God, if you know, one of the controversies I heard about was Peter Dinklage talking about how if you had dwarves as they are in this, you know, named Sleepy, Dopey, Grumpy, all that, it's going to be really, really bad. Well, let me tell you, if you want people to look at dwarves as the single most horrifying cinematic visual in recent years, then mission accomplished, because woof, these things are hideous. These things are... I had to see this on IMAX because that was the earliest screening, and just watching it on screen that big, because They are kind and give you a lot of close-ups. Thank you for that. Which is just so unpleasant to see. And I'm sure you've heard they're not... I don't even know if they use the word dwarf in this. It's in the title, but I don't think they ever use the word. They're just magical creatures. You want to know what their magical power is? They can put their hand on a diamond in the mines, and they all light up. Wasn't that necessary? Didn't that add so much to the story? So what I'm getting to is that there were moments like the dwarves, and then Gal Gadot at first starts off kind of funny, like in the right way. So she comes in, she's the stepmother, the queen dies, and she comes on in, and she just looks like an ordinary, pretty lady. Comes in, has a nice smile, and there's this narrator talking and saying, but she was evil, and just instantly you see her put on some, bracelets and rings and she's in the outfit immediately. And I just burst out laughing because there was like no transition. She's just suddenly evil. And she was actually rocking it okay for a little bit of time. She was doing okay. Again, these are not very well written characters, but we know the archetype. And she was playing the archetype okay. And then as the story just kept going, yes, there were moments where I was laughing because it was, so creatively bad in some respects. And then it did start getting annoying. And not just annoying, but other times boring. And that's always where I kind of draw the line. But in terms of like insulting the original, well, you already know going in this is not going to be really much like the original. So again, I'm like, at least give me something new. Still the bar that you just cannot... Maybe you can, but just has not been beaten yet is the Lion King remake. That was just the most insulting out of all these live action remakes. And this doesn't really come to that level. Because like I said, when you get to the third act, which I'll get into more detail about in a second, but where the other movie ends, that's just the first part of the third act. There's more in this one. And with, again, the problems they're trying to fix in this, I was kind of surprised they went certain angles with it, but at the very least, after the ending of the original film happens and it keeps going, at least I'm like, okay, well, I don't entirely know where this is going. So at least I have that to look forward to, where again, with Lion King, it's just, okay, just get to that song, get to that line, get to this. But there are choices in this that are so baffling because I'm going to do a video on this maybe next week about emotional storytelling, how it's a style, it's a way you can tell a story, and I always say there's this holy trinity of emotional storytelling. I think one is Snow White, another is Wizard of Oz, and another is Where the Wild Things Are. Big gap in between there, but I'll go more into detail about that when I do that video. But the idea is that it does not rely on not just much logic, but almost no logic. It is entirely what your emotions want to see. That is the setup. That is what it follows through with. And for the original film, for the original Snow White, which I guess I should talk about what I think of the original, I like it, but when the queen turns into the witch or the hag, whatever, from that point on, I think it's kind of a perfect movie, because that is exactly what your emotions want to see when watching that. I mean, not just as a child, which is certainly, I mean, that's when your emotions are, usually the strongest, but even as an adult wanting to remember back to just those raw emotions watching something. Who is that prince? Why does he know? He sees her once in the opening and then suddenly they're in love and everything. When he kisses her back away, she's like, goodbye, everybody. Well, what does that mean? Why do they suddenly have to go? They didn't even have a conversation. That's what your emotions want to see. And they just want to ride off into the castle. The castle's literally in the clouds. It does not take place in a literal world. And that's part of the fun. That's the fantasy. It's literally a fantasy. And not even that, it's a fairy tale. And we got to this weird mindset where for some reason we think people can't tell the difference between fairy tales and real life. And that's very, very odd to me. Especially in ones that I'll just say they're geared more towards girls. There's something where a boy can go and fight with a sword and everything. We don't have to say, hey, boys in real life don't fight with swords, but with girls, for some reason, we have to spell out, no, don't just wait for a prince to do everything. Do stuff on your own. They know. They grow up. They're grown-ups. I don't know why we feel like we have to, pat them on the head and say, this is not how it works. They No. So for them to take this angle is already something I don't like, but even in the narrative they create, it doesn't make sense. For example, early on, with an onslaught of narration, by the way, there's a lot of songs in this, and sometimes they just sing Whistle While You Work or sing a new song or something. They very rarely explain what's going on. So in the opening, you have a song where they're just singing about how happy they are and maybe teaching Snow White a lesson, as a kid. But then this narrator comes in, just keeps throwing information after information at you, much more backstory than you probably need for a fairy tale. And I even missed the point where the father wasn't in the picture anymore, where the king disappears. I'm watching this, I'm like, wait, what happened to the king? And they do this weird thing where they make it look like, maybe we're gonna do something with him. And then they don't. It's very, very bizarre. I'll try not to go into spoilers. Not there's a ton to spoil in this, at least you wouldn't think. But when she goes to the magic mirror, she's mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? The narrator makes it clear that the mirror can only answer one question. Obviously, that's the question. I never have any of you ever thought, well, why doesn't she ask the mirror more questions? Why doesn't she ask the mirror where Snow White is? Why doesn't she send the troops to go get Snow White? Why doesn't she use her magic for other stuff? No. Because again, it's a fairy tale and it's one that relies on your emotion. This is the very, very simplified version of this story. Just do we have to know in The Boy Who Cried Wolf, do we have to know his backstory? Do we have to know everything about him? Do we have to know what hair color he was? Do we have to know how old he was? Do we have to know his personality? No, you just get it. They're very simple stories to teach a very to get across a very simple goal. And that is to give you an emotional journey. In Boy Who Cried Wolf, that's supposed to teach you a very important lesson, and it sticks with us. So when you have them say, and the mirror could only answer one question, that kind of logic just doesn't mesh well in this world, because you're already going off of a story you are trying to escape from, but trying to be sewed at the hip to as well, because obviously she's going to wear the outfit that looks like Snow White, you're going to have the queen wearing the outfit that looks like the queen, and you have these moments where you're trying to be super, super literal. But then other moments where if you're gonna be that literal, that gets you in that mindset where you're gonna question everything and you're gonna question more things that don't make sense that the movie obviously doesn't want you to ask about. Like, what are these dwarves? What are these creatures that are not called dwarves yet? It's called Seven Dwarfs. I just realized this started off talking about Gal Gadot early on versus later. That's how much crazy is going on in this movie. It's very easy to get sidetracked in this because it's so not well sewn together. So Gal Gadot's kind of rocking it as the queen. She's very sophisticated. I don't remember being so opinionated. She's there like the most action she'll do is she'll turn and her cape will fly and she'll do this weird thing with her nails or something. Like she'll be sitting there and her nails go like that and they have a weird sound. Whenever she turns, she has sound effects because she's wearing so much jewelry and leather that's like creaking and stuff like that. Like, that's funny. That's fun. That's taking the idea and going all the way with it, and going even more over the top with it, and that's great. But then later, they do what they did in Wish, where you have this villain set up, and for whatever reason, they just make her suddenly really flamboyant and flashy, and she has this big number where she's singing really crazy and goofy and weird, and it doesn't match at all. It's so bizarre. And again, you can just see like the Disney chart guy saying, well, the chart says, funny villain songs are really, really it, and kids listen to that more, so let's have one of those in there. Even though the character is not supposed to be funny, at least not in that way, not a very flamboyant way. Again, when she had the very sophisticated, snobby, that's fun, that's funny, but I don't know how many kids would see that as funny. They probably see it as threatening, but us as adults, we find that a lot of fun. So that's what this movie does, and there's so many moments where if it was emotional storytelling, maybe it would work okay, but because it's more literal, it just makes you raise more questions and makes you see more of the problems. Again, without going too much into spoilers here, there's a character, I'm trying to think how to word it, there's a character with a disability in the original that also has the same disability here. Now in the original, he just lives with that disability if it does okay. In this one, he beats the disability. Why? Because he wanted it enough, because he had enough confidence to beat it. And I'm thinking to myself, well, in an emotional storytelling, maybe you can get away with that. That's still a big maybe, you know, but I feel like I've seen other stories kind of work with something similar. In something this literal where you're supposed to read into, this is the message, this is what we're trying to get across, this is what we're trying to teach little girls and everything, I would look at that and say, so boy, if somebody else has this disability and I'm supposed to take this very literally, I can just go up to that person and say, we just don't want it enough, really want it, really hope and dream and stuff like that. And that doesn't make sense. Again, I don't think this is a spoiler because everybody knows this ending. And again, it's not the ending in this one. The kiss to bring her back to life is still done in this. And now that has never bothered me. There's a big hoopla about it years ago, which I did not understand. So if a woman's dead and the only way to bring her back to life is a kiss, can't do it. Didn't get the consent. Just let her die. Let her die. I don't follow that. And again, it is still a different type of story. It's emotional storytelling. Them sharing that conversation, that means true love. It is not meant to be taken literally. She's singing about one day my prince will come in. They've had one conversation. Yes, because it is a very short, only relying on your emotions. That's how it's supposed to work. But if you're going by that mindset in this one, again, the very literal mindset, and they're always like, well, we don't want to be problematic. We don't want to make people upset. It's very interesting that they kept that in there. And the thing is always, well, I mean, because you heard the interviews, well, she doesn't have to be saved. She doesn't have to, yeah, she kind of does. Which is fine. Characters have to be saved. Characters get in peril. Sometimes they get themselves out. Sometimes they have to rely on their friends, and that makes sense, or their loved ones. They make connections. You want those emotional connections. I don't see the problem. If it doesn't match the character, then I get that. If it's like a strong, capable character, but like, you know, constantly gets kidnapped all the time, you know, that doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, in this case, I get it. I totally get it. But again, there's so many moments like that. There's a moment after that scene where the queen makes Snow White an offer, and I'm just watching it like, well, then what's... Because again, I'm like, well, where is this going? And it really doesn't go anywhere. Again, you can feel like they're trying to hammer in some kind of message, but they're trying to force it in so much at the cost of the logic and sense of the characters, which again, if you were doing like the original, you could do that. It was all emotional, but with this, you're trying to make them more logical, so it doesn't add up. And another really interesting thing, so with I know I usually don't talk about controversies and, you know, building up to a movie and stuff like that, but this one, again, it was impossible to escape it with this. I remember seeing a lineup. So they said, and maybe they did, I don't know, but you've probably seen this picture too, of the dwarves, in quotes, before people knew, or before they announced they were going to be CG, they were going to be magical creatures. It's people of different shapes and sizes and gender, all that stuff, and people, you know, kind of rightfully so, in my opinion, you know, kind of lost their shit over and said, what? Those aren't dwarves, what are you doing? Well, it turns out they're in this movie, and they're not the dwarves, and they're wearing the exact same clothes. They're a band of thieves that are helping out the love interest in this, who's not a prince. Who cares? You know, but he is going against the queen and trying to steal from people, kind of like Robin Hood, you know, rob from the rich, give to the poor, stuff like that. So that makes me think one of two things. Either way, it's kind of funny. One is that they were never supposed to be the dwarves. They were just these... But there are 7 of them, which is very conspicuous. But let's say they were never supposed to be the dwarves. They were just supposed to be this, you know, band of burglars, whatever. Then that's kind of funny because we knew Disney has gone so far with this about being, you know, inclusive to a point where it's like it just doesn't make sense in the story, even the style of the story. You know, that we would have that misunderstanding. Though again, very weird that 7 of them. Or they did change it, and they decided, well, we don't want to, you know, throw these people out of a job here, you know, we paid them, they thought they're going to be on the big screen, so let's still give them a part, which is very nice. It doesn't feel very Disney, but, you know, that is very nice if they did that. If that is the case, then there's a lot of moments where I feel like, well, you could have been developing the dwarves a little bit more. Because, again, I mean, there's just not much to them, except for the most part, again, I don't want to go too much into it, but except for Dopey, which is going to sound weird because they all look really hideous. I don't like looking at them. But whoever animated Dopey did a pretty good job because he, again, has to express what he's feeling and everything without talking. And there's some really sweet moments with him. It never looks like he's there. It never looks like he's really in the scene with anybody. None of the dwarves do. But there is definitely like a good range of emotion. You always know what he's thinking. They're nice, quiet moments, and they really, really work until a certain point. And if you see the movie, you'll know what point that is. So yeah, basically, and with what I was getting to before about the bandits of the different sizes and everything. There's one that has a running joke about a crossbow, and he has like the big, I guess, like kind of hero moment at the end, and kind of the big funny moment. And while he's saying that, the dwarves are just standing there, they're not doing anything, which really makes me think they were supposed to be the original dwarves. I don't know. Maybe when they released that picture, they straight up said, these are the Seven Dwarfs. So it could be. But either way, there's something funny around it. And again, it kind of feeds into the controversy that's been going into it. And that is the one thing I would kind of say. I could see that a little bit as a controversy about, because I've heard both. I've heard people say, well, the Seven Dwarfs are very demeaning, they're simplified, and it just makes everybody think they're cute little cartoons. But I've also heard people say, well, no, this would give jobs to, little people who, aren't seen on the big screen that much and could really allow them to, shine in the spotlight and have these very distinct personalities that are fun and memorable. I mean, we all remember the Seven Dwarfs. So I get, that's the one thing I would legit say from what I've seen that I see as a controversy. The other stuff is more just like actresses saying stuff that just kind of sounds like what they always say at Disney now. I mean, it's almost like they're just reading the memo of like, strong, tough, not a damsel in distress, so much better than the original, we've come a long way, blah, blah, like all that stuff. Granted, again, with what she was saying about the original, strong disagree, but we can do that. We can disagree. I feel like Amelia Perez, like that's controversy. That's a lot of stuff that's like, whoa, that's bad. Like that's a lot of really, really bad stuff. Where this, I just feel like it's just opinions I disagree on. So I don't know, but maybe I haven't seen the whole story. Maybe there is more to it. I'm not gonna pretend like I followed all of it. I'm just judging this movie as a whole, as it is. And in terms of that actress, what's her name? Rachel Zegler. I've seen her in other stuff, and I think she's fine. I think she's got a great voice. She's got a great look. I'm not going to pretend like she's a phenomenal actress, but she's fine. She's someone you could very easily see in films like what she's in, like West Side Story or Shazam or something like that. Like you can very easily see her being like, this big star. In this movie, though, even though she sings well, and granted, the script has given her nothing to work with, she does not sell a lot of these scenes. I can't say she's bad, but her acting is not good enough to save the character. It's very, very bland. And again, I know you can look at the original Snow White and say she's kind of bland, but again, for that style, I think there is much more of a personality to her than there is to this one. And I think that's what they miss with a lot of these remakes of fairy tales. There's very few of like the original characters, like the leads, particularly the Disney princesses, get a lot of flack for this, for being, too bland and passive and everything. With the exception of Sleeping Beauty, who I think is a complete bore. Yes, I agree with that. You win that one. The others, I think, all have something. They have more going on than I think they give credit for. And again, if you were to take it literally, sure, yeah, I'd say there's problems, but they're not supposed to be taken literally. Their fairy tales have gone on and on about that. And I think it's very easy, because they are so simple, it's very easy to relate to them. And I do think, well, not like a complex character, particularly complex, you do feel for the emotions of the character. I mean, it's practically a silent film, and it's very close to, coming out of like the silent film era. So that's not surprising. So a lot of the storytelling is in the visuals. And again, what you're feeling looking at those visuals. When she goes into the forest in this, that's the one of the big scenes everyone remembers is, the forest looking really creepy in the original. And again, the idea was it was her imagination. She sees these eyes and creepy trees, but they're all It turns out they're actually friendly animals that come out. Those are the eyes. It's just in the dark. Where in this, they say it's an enchanted forest. They say it's a magical forest. And which, okay, I don't like that as much, but whatever. The scene goes by very quickly. And it's just not as clever because, she sees all these creepy trees doing all these things. And then she sees these glowing, like, orange eyes. I mean, like, devil eyes. And then it comes out and it's a deer. But the orange eyes disappear. Like, they're missing. So how did the magic forest make the eyes of a deer go orange? Why did it do that? In fact, why did the forest go creepy like that at all to begin with? When you put it in this world, in this mindset where you're supposed to question everything and take everything literally, that's what we're gonna do. And the pieces aren't gonna go together then. Where in the original, again, it's clear it's supposed to be her imagination. It's getting worse and worse the more and more scared she gets. Everything becomes very literal. Instead of just a tree looking scary, suddenly and almost looking like it has a face, suddenly it does have a face. It's how she's seeing it. Again, that's the brilliance of emotional storytelling. I'm not saying it's better than different types of storytelling, but it is a style and there is an art to it. And Disney live action remakes do not understand that. And because of that, it makes the films less clever. And it makes you disconnect so much more from them. There's just not as much an emotional connection. So, yes, it's a film that at times can be so bad it's funny. Sometimes can be visually interesting. And maybe about a third of the time is kind of boring. This is also a film that has, I never thought I would say this about Disney film, probably too many songs. So they have the advantage that they already have songs written, okay. And some even combine in a clever way. I thought they combined Hi Ho and We Dig together in the same song. I actually thought that was pretty clever. They actually do go very well together. But the other songs, A, don't sound at all like the original songs. B, are not very hummable. They sound nice. They're orchestrated nice. The lyrics I remember being okay. It's kind of like the flip of Wish, where Wish had nice melodies, but everything else about it wasn't that good. This one actually does have some nice lyrics, but not particularly memorable melodies. But also, there's way too many of them, and they get interrupted a lot. Like, someone will be singing, and then they'll just stop, have a conversation, and then they'll go right back into singing the song again. It's like, I thought we were done. Okay. So yeah, the best way I can describe it is that it feels like a Disney film production with a Disney Channel script. If this played on Disney Channel, like right after Descendants or something, I still wouldn't like it, but I don't think I'd be as harsh on it. You just kind of go, well, okay, this is what they got. You get it. It's a TV channel and everything. But with this much money and to some extent time put in, I know they had to keep delaying it to make all these changes and everything. And just going off of this mindset that just feels, I mean, it was already so dated when they started coming out. Like I said, I feel like I caught on to why these didn't work after about 2 movies. I guess you could argue maybe a movie and a half. But so there is a part of me that does kind of look at all the people that liked Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, the remakes that is, and enjoyed them. And now is starting to wake up and be like, hey, wait, but these aren't so good. I think they're missing the point of these original stories. So I can't act like, what were y'all, dummies? I mean, come on, I was right there the whole time, because I was kind of a victim to it too, the more I think about it. When I really looked back, I picked up on it pretty quick, but I was like, yeah, I guess I kind of looked at the stuff I thought was kind of neat. Like in Maleficent, I thought Angelina Jolie looked kind of cool as Maleficent, had kind of a cool style to how she looked, and so I kind of overlooked everything else. I thought it was a neat idea of like, oh, it's like Wicked, but with Maleficent. Okay, neat. And same thing with Cinderella. Like, it had a nice visual style, was kind of doing a different angle on the story where it's like, okay, it felt a little new. Like, not super new, but a little bit. That you could overlook the stuff that now we see is clearly not working. But yeah, I feel like after that, I think that's part of it too. When you get to the movies that really I really had a connection with, like I really have a connection with Beauty and the Beast. And to some extent, I do really have a connection with Snow White. Like I said, the last third, I feel like I really have a connection with. You do start to get more and more angry, and you start to see that they're really not understanding what these stories are about, or the style that it was utilizing, the storytelling techniques, or even the artistry of how these drawings and the style help tell the story, and instead is replacing it with something that, like I said, is very literal. It's not supposed to be very literal. They're fairy tales for a reason. And I'm not at all saying you can't play with that. I feel like Disney has recently. You know, Frozen, I thought was great, and they play around with that idea and kind of poke fun of even like old tropes. And it's like, cute. That's fine. You can have them speak more modern. You can have some of the lessons be a touch more, literal, but they still work it in with the fantasy and the playfulness and the imagination and the artistry. And there is something still very inspiring and influential about me. Frozen just took over the world for a while there. And, stuff like Encanto and Coco, I kind of feel like are almost like modern day fairy tales. Like, we've seen this with Pixar, and when it's really on its A game, it can really kind of in a way redefine the fairy tale without having to go back and retell it. They actually do something, they construct it differently and create new narratives with new characters. And that's wonderful. So I'm not against this idea of reinventing the fairy tale, but I think you have to have an understanding of it. And I don't think Disney does right now. I think they're looking more at the backlash that they've gotten over the years. Some justified, some not. I actually kind of like when they give a little pushback. I like in one of the few good scenes in Wreck-It Ralph 2, I like when all the princesses are together and they say, does everyone think all your problems were solved because a big, strong man came in and saved you? Yeah, what's up with that? Oh, she is a princess. Like, that's funny. That's a little pushback that I think is kind of needed. But they're taking that to... They're not really doing that. It's like they're ashamed of their past movies. I mean, just everything about them except the visual aesthetic. And I don't think that's right. I think there is more to them. And if you hear me talk about, Disney live-action remakes, you've heard me say this a million times before. But yeah, so where does this fall, as I said 10 years ago at the beginning of this review, in terms of the other live-action remakes? I mean, Lion King, I'd maybe give half a star to. I really, really hated it. For a while, I was riding like maybe 2 stars on this one, but then as it kept going and it just got a little more annoying and a little more boring and just kept making dumber and dumber choices, I think I'm at 1.5, which is not the worst, definitely not good. So yeah, it's... Are you surprised? Like I said, this is the film that everyone's been looking forward to hate watch, it sounds like. And like I said, YouTube critics, like I said, this is definitely Christmas Day for us. But maybe you have a different thought. Maybe you have a different opinion. If you have seen this film, what'd you think of it? Did you think, you know what? It was really good. You like the modern changes, you like that it took something that you didn't get into originally and made it more interesting, and you like the more literal interpretation, you think it's more inspiring and creates better lessons, or do you hate it? Do you think this is the worst out of all the Disney live-action remakes, and Disney is dead and killing cinema with a poison apple? I don't even think they said a kiss brings her back to life the more I think about it. Sorry, I'm just thinking because she has a song, and I'm like, wait, did she even say, oh, true love's kiss, that brings her back? I don't even think they said that. The more I think about it. So, okay, sorry. I'm finding more problems even as I wrap this up. Or are you somewhere in between and you're like, you know what, some of these I like, fine, some I don't. This one's fine. Yeah, I like hearing the pretty voices and some of the nice visuals. Didn't really bother me that much. So, yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Take care.